Good evening. Coming up in just a few minutes on Satellite Showtime, some good news about two anti-scrambling bills in Congress. Technician Mike Gustafson will give us the lowdown on low-noise amplifiers and also a fun question of the week. Stay tuned. Good evening. Welcome to Satellite Showtime. I'm Pat Olson. Satellite Showtime is brought to you by our fine corporate sponsors, including Luxor North America and Qualtronics Incorporated. For the past several weeks, you've seen a person behind me and you probably haven't known who he is. Well, it's time to answer that question. His name is Perry Halverson, and he is production engineer for Nova Video Productions, which produces this show. What Perry is doing is operating the switcher. The switcher is the mechanism that brings up a picture from being black into a picture, and it brings it down again to black. I'm going to have Perry show you this right now. Perry, will you please take the picture and take it to black? That's called fading to black. And now, Perry, bring it up from black. That's calling fading up on the signal. So people who see this man behind me now know who he is. He's Perry Halverson. Thanks, Perry. Now on to our question of the week on Satellite Showtime. That question is, what's the most unusual installation you've ever done? This question is for dealers. What's the most unusual installation you've ever done? You can call us at one of these numbers, 608-647-4246 and 608-647-8902. Again, our question of the week, what's the most unusual installation you've ever done? And I'm sure we can be expecting some interesting answers. I hope you have some of them out there. As a matter of fact, I see the phone lighting up right now. Good evening, Satellite Showtime. Could you tell me the most unusual installation you've ever done?
Okay, as to date, the most unusual installation that I have ever done was to install a 10-foot dish on top of a 20-foot pole. The reason being because it was done here in an urban environment, and there were too many trees that surrounded the property line to get a clear shot at the sky. So we went ahead and we erected a 20-foot pole, went out and rented a forklift and fabricated a basket, and then worked out of the basket and assembled a 10-foot dish atop the pole.
Thank you so much for your call. And we have another call on the line right now. I'm going to ask this person about the question of the week. Yes, good evening, Satellite Showtime. Could you tell me the most unusual installation you've ever done?
I did one on a granite bluff one day. We used a little backhoe to dig a hole, and back into the backhoe was out over about a 150-foot sheer drop off where they had mined the rock out, and it was about 200 feet or so up through a thick woods to get to it from the other side. So it was kind of fun to get everything up there, and of course it was pretty after you got there.
Okay, thank you so much for your call to Satellite Showtime tonight. Again, our phone numbers: 608-647-4246 and 608-647-8902. And if you have any pictures of weird installations you've done, you can send them to us and we'll try to put them on our show. You can write to Nova Video Productions at Box 637, Highway 14 East, Richland Center, Wisconsin, 53581. As long as we're on the topic of installations, Shelburne Films of Reedsville, Ohio has produced a film about installations. It's called Installing Satellite Antennas, and we now show you this segment from that film on setting the pole.
Well, this is where the hard work begins. But setting the pole is really quite simple if we follow a few basic rules. First, keep in mind that this is the basic foundation for the system and will bear all the weight and the wind loading stress. The tripod-type polar mount on a concrete pad is very stable, but this type, where a single pole is used to support the dish, is the most common used for home systems. It is usually set directly in concrete. You must know your local soil conditions and dig your hole large enough to support the weight of your dish. The pole should have a crossbar or other protrusion welded on to keep the pole from turning in the concrete. The pole and the concrete should extend below the frost line. Freezing causes the earth to shift and settle, and if your foundation shifts, you could have real problems. Why? Because you must get this pole absolutely plumb. That is, straight up and down. The slightest deviation will cause tracking problems later. If we cement in a cage-like assembly and bolt our pole on, then we can adjust it to plumb anytime, even if the earth does settle a bit. But remember, this point, where the pole enters the ground, is the fulcrum point and takes all the stress in a high wind. The pole acts like a lever. The longer the pole, or the bigger the dish, the more stress at the fulcrum point. To strengthen this, we can add tripod-type braces around our pole, or pour a high-strength mixture of concrete into the pole, filling above the ground level. The bottom line here is to make sure it's strong and absolutely vertical. Let the concrete set well.
And after that, the film will show you how to set the dish on the mount and how to aim and track the satellites. We want to thank Shelburne Films for this production. Coming up tonight on Satellite Showtime, an update on the 2 anti-scrambling bills in Congress.
Luxor, space-age technology at an affordable price. Satellite receivers, antenna actuators, remote controls, and auxiliary sensors, all by Luxor. Here's a totally integrated satellite television reception system. The Luxor 9550 remote controlled satellite receiver. 24 channels, selected, fine-tuned, programmed for automatic recall. 4 different audio systems, built-in RF modulator, automatic polarization, 2-speed scan, video inversion control, AFC defeat, and Dolby noise reduction and more. The Luxor 9534 antenna actuator, automatic satellite selection by remote control, all at the touch of a button, remarkable ease and accuracy. And the Luxor Mark II, a high-performance block satellite television receiver system, several sets, each having their own independent channel selection at the same time from a single antenna. That's the Mark II. Just a few of the high-performance, technically advanced satellite products from Luxor.
Welcome to the world of satellite TV opportunities, the marketing techniques magazine for satellite television that reviews the latest technology and introduces you to people you should know.
Satellite TV Opportunities is the marketing techniques magazine for satellite TV dealers. Our single purpose is to help dealers increase their sales and their profits through improved marketing techniques.
Call today for your subscription to success, 1-800-922-2812, Satellite TV Opportunities magazine.
Satellite TV Preview is the best thing next to your satellite dish. With all those programs now at your fingertips, you don't want to miss a thing. Satellite Preview lists over 100 transponders in an easy-to-read schedule grid. It has the daily list of movies, special, and sports, plus a list of sports by event. Save over $7 by calling in your subscription today. Get 52 issues of Preview for only $39.95. Call 1-800-826-0735. Dealers, we also have a special for you. Call the same toll-free number.
Welcome back to Satellite Showtime. There's good news about two pro-industry bills in Congress tonight. Those bills are H.R. 1769 and H.R. 1840. These bills are gaining support in Congress. Each has now about 30 co-sponsors. The reason for this surge in support, your phone calls and letters to your U.S. representatives. An aide to Congressman Billy Tozan of Louisiana, original sponsor of H.R. 1840, says 30 to 40% of House members have requested information about one or two of these bills. Now, this is a high percentage. In spite of the bill's support, it may be a while, however, before any public hearing on them takes place. That's because the House Telecommunications Committee that's taking care of the bill is also involved in a big other issue right now, and most communications issues are being put on hold because of this. You are still encouraged to write to your U.S. representative and encourage him or her to support these bills. At the opening ceremony of the recent Space STTI Tulsa show, space attorney Rick Brown was asked about whether there was a legal precedent for programmers to join together and scramble.
There's about 70 years of precedent in this country on antitrust laws, and there are various kinds of conduct that do violate the laws, and various kinds of conduct that don't. First, the conduct has to occur. Second, you have to prove it occurred, and then you have to prove that you're damaged by it. In my view, some of the events that have happened are very suspicious. We have some records of some of the things that have happened, and events are happening every day. And I expect those events will continue to happen. I believe that at some point, there may be a level of events that have happened, discussions that have occurred, pressures that have been placed, actions that have taken part by more than one party. It's really not inappropriate for one company to say to another company, I'm your supplier, I'm your customer, this is what I want you to do. It's a little different when people get together to do that sort of thing, forming boycotts or forming conspiracies to violate certain antitrust laws. We are attuned to what's going on, watching it very carefully. We maintain pretty careful records of all the events that take place. And at the right time, at the right place, if the end result of all these discussions is something that's harmful to us as an industry, we'll take appropriate action. But people talking and people doing things are two different things. And yes, there's a lot of discussion, but we have to see what happens first. We have to see the end result before we act.
Brown was asked the ways through which the home satellite industry can fight the scrambling battle.
We have two forums to fight this battle. One is the courts and one is the legislature. We're obviously working with Congress. We have two bills in Congress. Right now, they are gaining acceptance by the Congress at a faster rate, even faster rate than the legislation that was introduced last year. With respect to the courts or the Justice Department, you have to have a little bit more evidence. You have to have more things happen before you really have a case. premature to say when we're going to act because the events change weekly.
Space Board of Directors Chairman Taylor Howard told an audience his thought on the scrambling issue.
Now, I've said that scrambling is part of our future. Cable would tell you that everything in the sky will be scrambled. There are others who tell you nothing will ever be scrambled. The truth is someplace in between. I'm not sure as an engineer, you know, I can't. I'm not a marketing guy, and some marketing guys do very good research, but I can't understand how pay-per-view will ever work. I just have a feeling on myself pay-per-view won't work. They're going to do the experiment though. Nobody trusts marketing surveys. You got to go do the experiment. Pay-per-view people are going to be there. In 5 years, we'll know the answer. I don't know what the answer will be, but in 5 years, there are a lot of entrepreneurial people in the pay-per-view business that are going to know an answer of some kind. I think that many of the courageous, far-looking advertiser, free enterprise type services are going to be the ones that really survive in this medium. And I think we should all encourage them at every turn.
In other news tonight, this from Canada. In Canada, cable TV is going to try to reach some areas previously reached only by satellite TV. That's because of a new ruling by the Canadian Federal Cabinet that says cities and towns can offer cable TV as a public utility. A previous ban prevented governments or their agents from holding a broadcast license, with the exception of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Saskatchewan Attorney General Gary Lane says the new rule will benefit isolated and underserved communities in all of the Canadian provinces. Satellite Showtime will continue right after this with a segment from technician Mike Gustafson and a review of some small machines.
Are you confused about satellite programming guides? Are you tired of monthly inaccurate guides that are big and bulky and about as much fun to use as a city phone book? How about tabloids with hard-to-read print, incomplete movie listings that are about as easy to use as a road map? Or newspaper guides with confusing grids that fall apart in your hands? There is an alternative. Onset, the easy-to-read, easy-to-use weekly programming guide with more movies and sports. Best of all, Onset is only $39. That's right, 52 issues for only $39. But don't take our word for it. We'll send you a free copy of Onset, and you can judge for yourself. And if you're a dealer, ask about our dealer program. Make your customers happy and make money. Call Onset now. Toll-free 1-800-438-2020 or write Onset, Box 2347, Shelby, North Carolina, 28150. Onset, you've seen the rest. Now try the best.
Welcome back to Satellite Showtime. Remember, our question of the week, it's for you dealers out there. We want to know what the most unusual installation you've ever done is. Our phone numbers are 608-647-4246 and 608-647-8902. Just as satellite dishes are getting smaller, so are computers. New generations of personal computers are getting smaller and more powerful. Consider this thought. When UNIVAC computers of the 1950s came along, they filled entire buildings. Then came the microchip and the smaller, faster desktop machines. But now, micro speed and performance are being packaged in notebook-sized units. From the New Text Times, based in Madison, Wisconsin, here's Dan Goodman with a review of notebook machines.
I remember ever since I was a little child, electronics companies have been trying to make things smaller. Remember when you could put a radio in your shirt pocket and Sony's Tummy TV from the early 60s? Well, that drive to making things more compact, more portable, is still going on today. In fact, a lot of attention is being focused on shrinking large computers like this one into boxes no bigger than a student notebook. The ball really got going last year when Radio Shack introduced the Model 100, a notebook-sized computer with a full typewriter-style keyboard, an adequate memory, and a big built-in display. features that made it a truly practical portable computer. A significant feature of the Model 100 is that several pre-written programs are designed into its circuitry. It's really an entire microcomputer workstation, complete with telephone modem built into a convenient size. The Model 100 and its lookalikes continue to sell well in the $600 to $1,000 range, and are quite reliable considering the abuse they get on the road. Another group of notebook-sized portables is on the horizon and may attract the executive class computer user. One of the best examples of this new breed of computer is the Hewlett-Packard HP 110. It shares a lot of the same concepts as the Model 100, but with some significant differences, like 8½ times the memory, a display that shows 4 times as many characters, and the most sophisticated financial modeling program, Lotus 123, built into it. The design of the HP 110 is more like the lap computers we'll be seeing in the next 5 years. The flat panel display opens up to reveal the keyboard. The HP 110 has enough extra memory inside to run other programs, which you can load from an optional disk drive. But since the display characteristics are different from the IBM PC, you might not be able to run all PC software on the 110, despite its PC compatibility. For the moment, however, my Model 100 for under $800 works great for what I do. I can create purple prose with it, for example, and then transfer the text to my IBM PC or Macintosh for heavy-duty word processing and editing. It's also nice and easy to get into the telecommunications mode with a portable like this. I use it almost exclusively for communicating with the Source, CompuServe, and the New Tech Times bulletin board, even from my office. If I were a college student today, you can be sure I'd stuff my Model 100 or a similar computer into my backpack for taking class notes, typing term papers, or researching information databases. And it's all because electronics companies and people continue to make things smaller.
Dan's work on the deck just continues the illusion of laid-back Californians, but don't let the image fool you. Dan is a serious Chicagoan who works long and hard hours. Another hard worker is Mike Gustafson. He is technical editor and West Coast editor for STV magazine, and he's become a regular on Satellite Showtime. Let's see what he has in store tonight.
Thank you, Pat, and good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about low-noise amplifiers. Those are those very mythical, very small devices that you pay a lot of money for, or at least you used to pay a lot of money for. A low-noise amplifier has just one real job in this world, in our system. That is to increase the signal level without adding any noise. But we do live in an imperfect world. As such, the LNA always adds a little bit of noise. So the question is, how much? And that's what we're paying our money for. The lower the noise temperature, the more money we're going to spend for that low-noise amplifier. So let's take a look at what the block diagram of a low-noise amplifier looks like. Here we have an LNA. That's this structure here. We have our pickup probe that accepts the energy from the feed, feeds it into an isolator, and I'll get back to that in a minute, operate to our first stage of amplification, which is a gas FET. Now here is where we do all our magic. That is to say, it is in this first stage where the low noise part of the amplifier occurs. It has a little bit of gain, but its prime value is it has very low noise contribution. The next 3 or 4 stages are called bipolar. They're regular transistors that, of course, are special in their own right in that they operate up at 4 gigahertz, but they are not gas FETs, if you will. And they are just bulk gain. They just amplify. And there's usually 4 stages of what we call the bulk gain. A typical amplifier like this will have a noise temperature from 75 degrees to 120 degrees, and it has a gain from 40 dB to, say, 55 dB. A 40 dB amplifier might have just this stage missing. A 55 dB gain amplifier will have all the stages, but they'll all be just tuned up just right and be getting lots of gain out of it. The output is on a type-in connector in 3742 gigahertz, same as its input. We run DC up the coax, take the DC off the coax before the amplifiers, run into a power supply, and the power supply drives all the stages. Now let's get back to this isolator. There are two basic kinds of LNAs out there these days. There's called the isolator LNAs and non-isolated LNAs. Well, what that means is the isolated LNAs have this isolator installed. The non-isolated LNAs have this removed and it goes straight through. The purpose of this little guy is, as this circle indicates, any energy coming in is conveyed in this direction and on into the amplifier. Any power reflecting back off of here is caught by the same spinning, spins around and goes into a load. This means that this little amplifier is always presented with a constant impedance or load out here by this isolator. Well, if we remove the isolator, what happens? Well, we have to have a much better designed amplifier. We have to have a first stage that's capable of handling whatever we do out here, different kinds of antennas, different F over Ds, different feeds. It's a lot more critical, but it can be done. The advantage of removing the isolator is twofold. A, it means that we can get a much lower noise temperature. Why? Because there is losses in this isolator, and those losses directly add to the noise temperature. So if we can remove this isolator, we can, by automatic, get a much lower noise temperature for this LNA. The second advantage is cost. In a low noise amplifier such as this, the isolator is the highest priced item. And we're going to show you what a little isolator looks like in a second. So I think that covers this guy pretty well. It's low noise amplifiers. Now, the antenna temperature and the low noise amplifier temperature set what is called the system temperature. Once we set that, once we get past the LNA, we can do nothing to harm the system temperature. Now, if we were to run our IF lines, our intermittent frequency down converter lines, too long, we could not have enough gain to keep our system out of the noise, if you will, and that would certainly degrade it. But if you're running anywhere in a 40 to 55 dB LNA, you'll have more than enough gain, so you wouldn't worry about it at all. Now, let me show you what an isolator looks like. Here is an isolator. Now, this has got connectors on it. It's part of my collection of stuff I use here in the lab. But essentially, we take off the housing, take off these two connectors, and we drop this in front of the amplifier section of a low noise amplifier, and this is the isolator. And this little devil here can go from anywhere $35 to $60, depending on the quantity you buy them in. Okay, now behind me I have a collection of low noise amplifiers, low noise block down converters, and low noise converters. Now, first off, remember our old friend the feed. We talked about this flange. Well, take any LNA or LNB and it bolts on. And that's how the configuration should be in your system. If you've got it this way, you're actually incorrect. It should be this way. Alright, so that's how it would go in your system, how you should see it in your TVRO system. Alright, this is a Dexel low noise amplifier. Nothing really special about it. It's an older model. They don't make this anymore, but it was one of the oldies but goodies, if you will. This low noise amplifier is one of the better ones. As an example, this is about 110 degrees Kelvin. That's its noise temperature. This is made by Norsat, and it has 53 dB of gain, but it's a 75 degree low noise amplifier. 75. Yes, here we have a non-isolated LNA. You clearly can't tell the difference. I mean, clearly it's bigger than that. You can't really tell them unless you know when you purchase it that it is non-isolated. And it has a noise temperature of 50 degrees. 50. So remember, this was 50, that's 110. A considerable difference, and I'll show you a chart in a minute how that helps us. Here we have a low noise converter. Well, that a low noise converter means it's got an LNA and a down converter built into it. We still have our output, but we have to bring in all our tuning voltages and operating voltages on a separate connector. We don't bring DC up to coax anymore. So that's a low noise converter. 70 megahertz IF is essentially what it has. 70 megahertz IF, intermediate frequency. And then here we have a Norsat low noise block down converter. It's got a low noise amplifier in it and a block down converter. Notice that the connector is now a type F connector. We still run DC up to coax, But because we're not doing any tuning up here, we're just blocking the frequencies down, we don't need to have any other control voltages. So we have the WR229 input, that's what this is called, WR229. The input antenna, it's right there. That's a pickup probe, if you will. And then the output is on a type F connector. This is a 950 to 1450 megahertz intermediate frequency block down converter. Now let's look at a block diagram of a block down converter. A lot of blocks here. Okay, that's my second little drawing. Low noise block, LNB. Same pickup probe, isolator, or we could take the isolator out. In both cases, it can be either way. I'm showing it with an isolator. We have our first stage, which is a gas FET, just like before, but you notice we only have 3 stages now of amplification. Then we have a mixer and a dielectrically stabilized oscillator, or DRO, that's running at a single frequency. It does not tune, it's fixed. It mixes down, we go to some sort of a filter, then the output is 950 to 1450 megahertz. It's on an F connector, and we do pump DC up to coax. How do we get this 950 to 1450? Well, real quick, and don't worry about the math here. It's real simple. The oscillator here is running at 5.150 gigahertz. Our input is 3.7 to 4.2 gigahertz. So if we subtract 3700, 3.7 from 5150, we have 1450. That's the high IF. And we take 5150 and we subtract 4.2 gigahertz. That's 950. That's the low end. So we have 950 to 1450 block down converter built into a low noise amplifier. And the whole thing is called an LNB, or low noise block. The last item here is an LNC. Same setup, pickup probe, isolator. It does not require an isolator. You can take them out. 3 stages once again. But now we have, instead of a single mixer, we have an image reject mixer. It's a very special mixer. And there's actually more to it than just one symbol here, but for ease of explanation, we left it once. We have an oscillator, except it's a voltage-tuned oscillator, which means this is frequency agile. It moves around, it changes its frequency as a function of the tuning voltage. So we bring in our tuning voltage, and we tune this oscillator to this mixer. We have a small filter here, a low-pass filter, and usually 1 stage or 2 stages of IF amplification, intermediate frequency amplification. The intermediate frequency in this case is 70 megahertz. It is on an F connector or type in sometimes. We do run DC up the coax to drive the power supply, and we have a separate connector for tuning voltage up the side. So real quick math on that, 3700, the voltage tuned oscillator is sitting at 3630, subtract the two, we have 70 megahertz. And because this is an image reject mixer, we reject the other side of the mix product, and don't worry about that. Basically it's a 70 megahertz IF with an image reject mixer. This is an LNC. So, last thing, let's talk about how do we affect noise temperature and carrier to noise ratio. In other words, as I change the low noise temperature, how does the receiver's C to N actually change? So here are my assumptions. I'm using a 10-foot antenna with 39.5 dBi of gain. The antenna temperature is 30 degrees K. The receiver bandwidth is 27 megahertz. And the satellite EIRP is 35 dBW. Okay, so the LNA temperature, we have 120, 100, 85, 75, 65, and 55. Antenna G over T is a figure of merit of the antenna, and it's an intermediate calculation to get to received carrier noise ratio. So let's look at our set point. 120 degree K gives us a 10.2 dB C over N. We drop it to 100, 10.9 dB C over N, and see it increased by 7/10 of a dB. That's a better picture. 85 is 11.4, 75, 11.8, 65, 12.2. Think about that. 10.2 to 12.2. By changing our LNA noise temperature from 120 to 65, we've now increased our received C to N by 2 dB. Lastly, a 55 degree LNA, 12.7 dB receives C to N. So going from a 120 to a 55, we increase our C to N from a 10.2 to 12.7, which is a 2.5 dB increase in picture quality. That 2.5 dB is a significant amount. Very, very good. Now, let's suppose we changed down to a 6-foot dish. This still all holds true, not the absolute value numbers, because of course these would be lower, but the improvement. And that's why you find on small dishes we are running very low noise temperature LNAs. So I think that just about brings us to the end of this session. Thank you for viewing. My name is Mike Gustafson, and if you have any questions or comments on the show, please address them to myself, Post Office Box 20700, San Jose, California, zip code 95160. See you next time. Thank you.
Coming up on Satellite Showtime, the Calltronics video newsletter with Joe Kelch.
The Luxor Mark II, a new generation of electronic excellence. The Mark II is a block satellite receiver system. It offers independent channel selection for multiple TV sets from a single antenna. In the home, for neighbors to share, in hotels, apartment, offices, and for licensed SMA TV redistribution to the entire community. The Mark II by Luxor does it all. You receive the best signal, the highest possible performance with Dolby high fidelity sound. Other features include the individually programmed audio, AFC automatic fine-tuning controls, all on the 24 programmable channels. An infrared handheld remote will give complete control over the channel selection on any satellite. It's all so easy with Luxor Mark II. See it and then enjoy it. The Mark II does it all.
For a limited time only, you can receive Channel Guide for a special reduced rate. For just $9, you will receive 8 weeks of Channel Guide, a month of Galaxy One magazine, and the all-new 1985 Whole Earth Station catalog. That's a $20 value for just $9. Then close check and address, and you'll start receiving the original grid format for satellite TV. Due to this low price, no phone orders may be taken. Write today. Channel Guide, Department 808A, P.O. Box 1633, Englewood, Colorado, 80150. Do it today.
Good evening and welcome to Calltronics Video Newsletter. Reminder, we'll be out at Reno. That's the Reno Northwest Satellite Conference, August 2nd through the 4th, booths 603, 605, and outdoor booths 19 and 20. We'll be there, strong with the Calltronics crew. We'll be welcoming you and hope you stop in to say hello. In recent weeks, we've been talking quite a bit about the Trans 10 by Calltronics. To find out the latest on the Trans 10, here's Sales Manager Jim Atkinson for Calltronics. Jim, what is the latest on that?
Well, thank you, Joe. The increase in production has been outstanding in the last month and a half. And naturally, every summer you go through a seasonal slowdown during the month of June, typically.
Yes.
And the pickup has been much earlier this year in production, and the demand has been much greater, much sooner than normal. And a lot of this, I'm sure, is due to the appearance of the Trans 10. Consumers like the appearance very much. It's a very aesthetically pleasing dish because it's a transparency. The black color blends in so well with the surroundings of their home settings. And the dealers like it very well because of the assembly time. Many dealers are telling us they're able to assemble the Trans 10 in less than 1 hour, which with 2 people, and that's very good timing. They're on the belt very quick. And because of this, we're having to double our manufacturing facility again. It was not more than a year ago that we doubled our manufacturing, and again now we're doubling our space this next month. They're in negotiations for the building, and they're going to be breaking ground on that, and I believe you're going to be running some footage on that.
We'll have it either next week or the following week on the show.
Great, so that the viewers out there will have a chance to see the increase in size that Calltronics is taking place. But I think not only because of the assembly time and the appearance, also because of the performance of the antenna. It performs very well, and we've had it tested by McDonnell Douglas to more or less verify the tests and the performance of the antenna. That we are aware that it has capabilities of putting an excellent picture on the screen for the homeowners. And we've also done wind testing on the Trans 10 as well. This was done by Twin City Testing in Wausau, Wisconsin. And it's actually a test for the standards that are necessary for specific residential areas along coastal areas and also in some urban areas in several states require it's a housing code, I believe, that the antenna must withstand a 90-mile-per-hour wind. And the Trans 10 met these criteria, and because of that, the demand for the Trans 10 is growing at a very fast pace, creating the demand for it.
Great.
So it's looking very positive for the Trans 10. Also, we have got some new antennas coming. Soon to be available will be a Trans 6 that will be featuring or debuting at the Nashville show. And so the dealers, be online for that because it's going to be a hot mover as well.
So basically, Jim, it's the Trans 10 end of the conversation. It's the appearance, dependability, and of course the performance.
All those things together make the Trans 10 a real winner for the homeowners and for the dealers.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Joe.
The Trans 9 by Caltronics. This beautifully designed and crafted transparent antenna is poised to the industry on its ear. With the latest in antenna technology, the Trans 9 has strength, accuracy, and beauty at a price you won't believe until you experience quality and savings yourself. Baked acrylic, thermoset black finish, super strength ribs, hub, and rim. Caltronics means quality, and the Trans 9 lives up to the Caltronics tradition.
We'd like to also thank you for your excellent response to the products that have been shown on this program by Caltronics in the past weeks. Response has been tremendous, and thank you very much. The letters and phone calls are welcome, and the written inquiries have been responded to. Basically, it's this. We're able to serve you better through these responses, and we like it that way. In line with that, we'd like to remind you also that the number to call for any type of inquiry is 800-826-CALL, K-A-U-L. That's 800-826-CALL, K-A-U-L, anytime this evening. We have a special guest with us today, Steve Montgomery of Luxor. We took the opportunity of Steve's visit for a chat. Steve Montgomery with us today. I'd like to speak with Steve about Luxor and more generally about an engineer looking at the industry. Steve, you've been with Luxor for some time. What, how many years?
About a year now. Prior to that, I worked for another distributor who sold satellite receiving equipment since 1982.
Okay, so you've had your feet wet for over a year now.
Right.
Well over. As an engineer in the industry, it's always interesting to find out what you people see as some of the challenges and some of the problems of the industry. Where have we gone? Where has it all gone to, and what's coming up ahead? Is that too broad a brush to stroke with?
Well, as the industry matures from an engineering standpoint, you see equipment becoming more complicated in the sense of being able to do more, and at the same time easier to use in the sense of becoming user-friendly. And this is something that happens with any electronic device. We saw it in VCRs, we saw it in televisions, we're seeing it now in home satellite television receivers.
Where do you think the ultimate, I know there will be no absolute goal, but where's the trend heading to now in the industry? How much user friendliness will be out there? Is it going to be such that the people will, for instance, turn on their set and won't even have to use the remote anymore? Is that in the offing?
No, a remote is always nice to have. I think the remote will always be there because it means that you could sit in your chair and make the receiver or the television or whatever do what you want it to do without getting up. But it's possible that in the what I see happening right now is more and more manufacturers are going to a completely integrated approach where you have one component which does all the functions necessary to bring in the satellite picture off of any television transponder. It'll take care of the actual frequency, it'll take care of the audio, it'll take care of the satellite position and polarity, all these things so that the consumer doesn't even have to think about it. He just looks in a magazine for a particular program and then just punches a few buttons and the unit takes care of everything.
Terrific.
And that's an integrated approach. That's what we see more and more companies coming towards now, with just one component. In the 1982, I remember some of the early installations we did. You had one box for the satellite receiver, another box to control the polarity, another box to move the dish back and forth, and then another box for the modulator to change the signal from video to what the television could use. And sometimes you had a box for a stereo on top of that, so you can have a whole pile of boxes on top of your TV. And now we see that all in one box.
Great. I almost hate to bring this up, but what about the possibility of box upon box for scrambling? Is it going to come into one box? Is it going to be integrated into the receiver?
I'd like to stay out of the scrambling issue if at all possible. It's so confusing.
Yes.
And if there are, if the industry works somehow with the cable industry or let's say that the programmers to supply the information necessary to manufacturers then, or the components necessary to manufacturers, and it's cheap, simple, and efficient, then it'll be integrated in receivers, yes, and then all that will be taken care of. Okay. What would also be a step is another way things could go is that you could see receivers becoming an integral part of television sets. That's a possibility that Luxor is, well, it's what Luxor does in Europe right now. The satellite receivers are actually built into the TV sets, so you have the same remote control that controls regular channel selection, also controls satellites TV selection with no additional equipment.
Well, that's good to step in with a question about Luxor. As an engineer for Luxor, what are your duties? What are your challenges on a day-to-day basis? I imagine there's a great variety involved.
Well, most of what I do, I view my job, the way I view my job is as an educator. Most of the time I spend talking at seminars or going on the road and assisting distributors and dealers and installers in their problems. When I'm at Luxor, then I'm on the phone a lot, talking with people who are having problems. Again, I view it mostly as an educating job. There are a few other things that I assist with. I am fortunate enough in order to assist with some of the R&D research. When Luxor was coming out with the new blue down converters that you see on the market now, I spent a great deal of time looking at those at our little facility in Bellevue, Washington, and that was a thoroughly enjoyable part of my job. And also I have the fortune to contribute to operating manuals or information bulletins, things like that.
Great. So you travel quite a bit.
I've been doing a lot of traveling in the last 6-9 months, yeah.
And it's an industry that's got your attention completely.
It has its fascinations.
You bet it does. Thanks very much, Steve. Well, the August issue of STV magazine on the cover features a Caltronics Trans 10. Very pleased with that, and the story that ties in with the cover is equally good. It involves the installation tips from a person who didn't know too much about installation. And the long and short of it is installation the hard way. Author Pat St. Charles, who is Senior Copy Research Editor of STV Magazine, boils it down to this. It's very time-consuming and frustrating to try to do it yourself when you don't know what you're doing. Basically, the theme of it is, if you don't know what you're doing, please get help that's in a professional nature. So go through your dealer when you don't know what you're doing. Another item we wanted to tell you about is that all of you out there who are dealers and distributors, we certainly invite you to ask us tonight by phoning about Coltronics products. The numbers to call, 800-826-CALL, and in Wisconsin, 800-826-6682. Our sales staff is standing by for those calls, and they're very happy to serve you in this manner.
Here's the cable trencher that you've always looked for but have never found until now. The little dropper has durability, quickness, maneuverability, and economy all rolled up in its compact three-wheel body. How does it rate with the competition? Let's watch. The little dropper starts out against a trencher that costs twice as much but delivers only a fraction of the dropper's capabilities. Note the cleanness of the operation, its maneuverability, almost effortless. It weaves around obstacles with a nimbleness that makes the competition look like it's hibernating. Mission accomplished. The little dropper heads for a new site while the competition is still slugging it out. The little dropper handles 90% of all your trenching work. It saves time because you can drive it from site to site. It's rugged, dependable, and simple to operate. The little dropper has an extra heavy-duty clutch and a rear-end differential. Flotation-type tires are easy on the lawn, and it can be unhooked for other uses such as pulling a trailer. Looks great, drives great, and works great. And best of all, it costs less than you'd ever believe. Its base price at under $4,000. That's right, under $4,000 for the little dropper.
As you all well know, Coltronics' home office is located in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's known for some nasty weather in the fall, winter, and spring time of the year. And especially in the fall and winter, a lot of times this rainy weather will freeze or get inside the jack shaft itself and freeze inside of the actuator. And that's when problems become very serious. To prevent this from happening, we've got a weather boot available to you dealers and distributors to take care of that problem. This boot has a vent at the front and also one at the bottom. Let me show you one that is not installed yet. Here's the vent at the top and the vent at the bottom. You merely slide the unit, the weather boot, over the jack shaft. This part goes over the external tube and the front piece over the internal tube. And as the actuator extends, the preformed pleats unfold. And as it contracts, it goes back to its preformed shape once again. It's held in place with some specially designed wire ties to prevent any water from getting in around the shaft cylinder itself. And with this piece in place, this will prevent any rain from getting inside of the actuator tube itself and preventing any costly service call. Now, to make the system complete and totally impervious to any water intrusion, we also have motor boot covers as well. They also have the vent on the top side, and all these vents on the top side, they are curved down, and if you can see real closely, there's a small hole there to allow air to enter in through the system to prevent any condensation from occurring. The bottom vent is an excellent place for your cables to exit, to prevent also that by that way you aren't having to pierce another hole and allowing water to penetrate in through that hole. With these two units installed together, it will eliminate almost entirely any water intrusion into the system of the actuator. Call up any of the numbers listed on the screen throughout the program, or write the numbers down because these lines are busy during the program. And for future reference, also it's convenient to have that number listed. At twice the cost, these boots are worth it. Try one out. I think you'll like one. Thank you very much.
We here at Coltronics would like to show you, the dealer, our special thanks by helping you any way we can. Now, as a special bonus, we will give you this, the Luxor 9536 Remote Eye. Now, this can be yours free with the purchase of the Luxor 9550-34 system at our already low prices. Now, remember, call because these are going fast, so what I want you to do is to call now. And remember, they are going fast. Wow, hey, that was fast. Call soon because they are in a limited supply. The number that you can use is at the bottom of your screen, so call now. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Luxor Remote Eye, what it is, it's an added feature. You add it on to the main unit itself. Now what you do is you run a coax wire to another TV set, and this enables you to change channels or satellites from that particular room, say your bedroom or your kitchen, whatever you have, for example. So if you would like that 9536 Remote Eye at no charge, order now the 9550-34 system by Luxor. And again, to you dealers, as a special thanks from us at Cultronics, we would like to show you our appreciation as one of the most prized and successful Luxor dealers in the United States. Thank you.
That's it for this evening on our Cultronics video newsletter. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'd like to see you next week, same time.
Want to know more about satellite TV? Then go to the source for product reviews and how-tos. We're on the road and out in space, and sometimes in very cold places, with features and technical reports. It's all in satellite TV. That's only $19.95 for 12 big issues of STV magazine. Call now, 1-800-438-2020, and get this LCD calendar clock free with your subscription. That's 12 big issues of STV magazine and the clock for only $19.95. The number again is 1-800-438-2020. 1-800-438-2020. Call now.
And now we are at the end of this evening's Satellite Showtime, brought to you by our fine corporate sponsors, including Luxor North America and Cultronics Incorporated. Please tune in to next week's program when Mike Gustafson will tell you about receivers. The Shelburne film segment will focus on assembling the dish and mount, and we'll fill you in on the latest on scrambling and zoning. Until then, good night.